My name is Josh Erzman, and I will be interviewing Bobby Lee Bishop. Today is Sunday, November 11th, 2007, conveniently enough Veterans Day, and we are at Mr. Bishop's home in Greenfield, Missouri. Also present at this interview is Roger Erzman, the camera person for the interview, and this interview is sponsored by the Missouri State University Alliance for Veterans. Our veteran, Mr. Bishop, was born on September 17th, 1931. Now, Bob, would you please state for the record which branch of the military you served in and what your rank was?
I served in the United States Army, and my rank was sergeant.
Okay. Did you participate in any wars or combat actions?
I served in Korea during the conflict over there, but I was not in any hand-to-hand combat.
Okay. All right, let's start off, Bob, discussing a little bit of your background. Where did you grow up, and what was your life like there?
My dad and mother lived in Cedar County, Missouri, near the Stockton area, whenever I was born. And we moved to Dade County whenever I was about 2 years old, near the Pennsboro area. And I went to the Pennsboro school the first 4 years of my life. And after that, we moved to the Pilgrim area, which is approximately halfway between Greenfield and Everton in a little country area. And I finished my to the 8th grade at the Pilgrim School. Then I went 2 years to the Everton High School.
Okay. Did your family have a history of military service, or?
My immediate family, which is, I'm referring to Dad's family, were not military people. I had 2 uncles that served in the United States Army in World War II on my mother's side of the family. And also I had a cousin on my dad's side of the family that served in the United States Army. He lives at El Dorado at the present date.
Okay. How did you get into the service? Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, I'm not sure the year they started the draft board, but that was how I got into the Army. In 1952, I was served with a draft notice whenever I was 20 years old that they needed my services in some branch, and it happened to be the armed services.
Did you get to pick the Army, or?
I did not.
Okay. The choice was made for you.
The choice was made for me, and had I volunteered, I could have probably made a choice. But I waited for the draft notice.
Okay. How did you feel about entering the military?
Well, Josh, I wouldn't take $1 million for the experience and that I got to see and go through, but I wouldn't give 2 cents to do it again.
Okay. What were your first days in the service like, as far as your training and that goes? How were your first few days?
Well, I left Dade County and we went to Kansas City and went through a physical there. Then I come back to Camp Crowder and they issued my clothes. Then I went to Fort Wood and they assigned us to 8 weeks of infantry training. And after I got through the 8 weeks of infantry training, I had 8 weeks of engineer training. And I went into service, I think, in July of 1952. And by the time I got through with the 16 weeks of training, it was long towards fall. And I married my first wife 11 days before I went overseas.
How did that kind of affect the dynamic of just being married and then having to get up and leave?
That wasn't easy. That wasn't easy, Josh. I'm kind of dumbfounded for words right now. But I got through it. She and I both got through it whenever my wife went to Augusta, Kansas and worked for Bob Roundtree. She worked in the daytime as babysitter for Bob and Thelma Lee, and she worked at night as a Dairy Queen operator, and so she had her hands pretty well tied as far as staying busy, and we really didn't have that much time to worry about it and think about it.
Okay. As far as your training goes, you said you spent, was it 8 weeks?
8 weeks in infantry training. That would be preparing yourself for hand-to-hand combat. And the engineer training was for what I did. We build roads, bridges, buildings, and we did what somebody needed. If we needed roads in our area, well, our outfit would go build the roads. If a bridge got blown out or tore up in some manner, it was our job to go repair it.
Okay.
Or build one.
Were there any interesting stories, either funny or serious stories that occurred during your training that you might want to share with us?
I can't recall any funny stories. They were interesting stories. We might have a speed march for 10 to 15 miles, and what I mean by speed march, put on about an 80-pound field pack on your back and see how fast you could walk for that far. And needless to say, the people that weren't in shape, it was nothing for them to drop out and actually faint and drop out alongside the road.
Did you meet the folks that you met, the buddies that you made while you were in training? Did you continue to serve with them after you left training, or did you all just get sent off to different places?
Usually, and in my case, in the training, after you finished your training, those men would be dispersed. Now, I did not serve after the training with anybody that I went through training with. I did, one fellow that I left Dade County with, and he lives over here in Golden City. We left the same day. He went one direction to get his training, and I went another, but we met on the same ship coming home.
Okay. So you finished training. Where did you go after your training?
Went to Seattle, Washington, and it was rainy. It was in the fall of the year, late fall, in December, and it was foggy and rained every day. That was a miserable time that I was waiting to get orders to leave Washington.
And when did you receive those orders?
The 8th of January. There is a fiddle tune by the name of 8th of January, and that's how I remember that.
Okay. And were those orders were to send you over to Korea, right?
Yes.
Okay. How did you travel over there, and what was that experience like?
We traveled from Seattle to Japan on a ship. Then we got another ship at Japan and went from Japan to Korea.
Okay. Was it spacious ship, or was it pretty cramped, or?
It was a troop moving ship, and it's very crowded. But I did have a good job. I was on what they call the advance party. That means that I had a job on the ship, and I worked in the locker or freezer area. And about 2 days out, I got seasick, and my boss, or the one that was over me, told me to go up and lay down, and whenever I got to feeling better, to come back to work. And I never did report back to work, so I guess he figured that I didn't get to feeling better.
Okay. All right, so you arrived in Korea. Tell me a little bit about what job you were assigned to. I know you said you were a combat engineer, and what unit you were assigned to, and kind of, what the work was like.
Well, whenever we got to Korea, we unloaded, and it was in the night. The best I can remember, it was quite late. And they took us up to a train depot, and we caught a train, and that was probably just a little bit better than our stock cars. Cattle cars back here in the States to move troops. There was no windows in the cars, and we went through a tunnel, and that train was a coal burner, one of those choo-choo trains. And we was going up a mountain, and the smoke got so thick in our cars that you could scarcely breathe. And the coal dust out of that train engine, we was just almost black whenever we got to our destination the following morning. And they loaded us on trucks there at the train depot, and they hauled us out to various units, and mine was Company C, the 151st Engineer Battalion.
What was your job? What was your specific job, and what kind of tasks did you perform?
Well, whenever you get to a unit like that, why, you're at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak. In your squad, there is a squad leader, and then there is about 12 people to the squad. And then whenever I first got there, if they needed a difficult errand run or duty performed, the man on the bottom of the totem pole usually got it. And the longer I stayed there, there was another one or two come in, and I got to moving up the ladder. And our first duty was road work. We had road graders, we had dump trucks, and we had our own rock crusher. And but a lot of that work was done by hand. I'm going to use the rock crusher for an example. The road grader would grade up the road, and the rock crusher would be hooked behind a truck, and we as men would pick the bigger rocks up and drop into that rock crusher, and whenever we go up the road, we done our own gravel making. And usually there was just a little trail of crushed rocks right up there, and then whenever we got through with the crushing, the grader would scrape the rocks and spread them out. And in the winter time, we had what they call frost boils. I know you've driven down country roads where in the winter time they would, big old chug holes would break out. Well, that is because of moisture down under the road bed. And we would dig those out and haul chunk rock and fill in there, and then put gravel and dirt over that. And whenever we got through with it, it was just like the road, but no jug hole there.
Okay. What was the hardest part of your job?
At the time I was over there, I thought of being away from home was the hardest part. But now, 50 years later, I had no difficult or hard time. It was all in my head. I just missed my family, but no real bad difficulties.
Did you have a lot of contact with home while you were over there?
Yeah, I heard from my wife. If not every day, I might miss not more than 2 days and before I'd get another letter. She wrote me every day, but the mail system might have been to the point where I didn't get it every day. I wasn't that faithful. She only had one to write to, and I would hear from my sisters and my mom and dad, and periodically a cousin maybe. And I'd have several letters to write, and I didn't write everybody every day.
Okay. Was there ever phone calls, or were those pretty sparse?
There was absolutely no phone calls.
Okay. How was the food?
The food was not bad. There was times whenever I had C rations. That is food that's packed in a container that's supposed to be airtight and watertight. But you can get by on it, but it's not very good. But 90% of the time that I was in Korea, I had hot meals. And dried eggs was one of her main breakfast foods. And they are not the best in the world. They're not like sunny side ups. But I was one to learn not to complain about food whenever I was growing up.
Were there any ever like special treats that either the Army would provide or that somebody in your unit would get through a care package that he might share with the unit?
Everybody got care packages, and usually it was from a close member of the family. And I also got care packages from my family. And yes, we do share one with another.
What about the weather? What was it like?
In the wintertime, Korea is very cold.
What about summertime?
Summertime is, I don't remember the summertime of being extremely hot. The best I could remember, it was, I don't think we had high humidity there, and it was quite comfortable.
Did you have, I know I've read some accounts of the Korean War as far as infantry units that say that like during the wintertime that they didn't have the correct gear, the cold weather gear that they had. Was your unit pretty well supplied as far as having what you needed for the different conditions?
We had warm clothes, and we had what they call a Mickey Mouse boot. They were quite large on the outside, but they was insulated with thick insulation between your foot and the outside. That made the boot large in size, but they were quite warm. And we had Parkers, which had hoods on them, and they had a fur lining around the hood that went up over your head. I can't complain about the clothes or the food.
What were the general living conditions like as far as how many people did you have to bunk with? Were you in a tent? And
We were in tents, 12 to the tent. We had two little oil burning heaters that we burned kerosene for heat. That done a fair job of heating the tent, but it wouldn't run you out whenever it was a bad, snowy, rainy, cold day. But we survived.
what did you do for entertainment?
We had what they call USO shows. That involved instrument players and singers. Bob Hope played a big part in USO shows. I did not get to see Bob, but we had various shows to come over. In fact, Marilyn Monroe was in our area at one time, and I had a chance to go see Marilyn and didn't go. And I was quite disappointed in that decision that I made.
Why did you make that particular decision?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. What else? Whenever there wasn't a USO show coming through, what else would you guys do for entertainment?
Well, our working conditions was about 10 to 12 hours a day. And whenever at the end of that 10 or 12 hours, you didn't look for a whole lot of entertainment, and that was 7 days a week.
Okay. Did you have any contact with any of the local civilians?
Yes. We would get to, I remember one particular time, excuse me, I went to Seoul, and we had a day off, and I got to see some people in Seoul, and there was a couple of little guys that was, the Korean kids were shoe shining boys, and they got after me to shine my shoes. Maybe I needed, I'm not sure. But we kept telling them that we didn't need a shoe shine. Finally, the little boy said, "Well, I'll give you a shoe shine." So I stopped and let him shine a shoe. And whenever he shined one shoe, he was through. He wanted then me to pay for the other shoe to be shined. But I don't remember. He was just goofing around with me, but I do not think that I polished the other shoe.
Okay, one polished, one unpolished. What about Korean units or other American units? What kind of interactions did you have, especially other Korean units? Did you have any interaction there?
We had a lot of Korean workers. I believe they was called KFCs. I'm not sure what that stands for, Korean something. But it was kind of like the American people had CC camps. It was work for the Korean people, and their government gave them the work to help us. I have some pictures there somewhere that I could show you what I'm talking about. But they worked right alongside of us, and I'd say there was one Korean for one American that was working.
Okay. Were there any humorous moments in your unit?
There was humorous. The American men and the Korean people would pick at one another and show a lot of humor.
Okay. Anything funny ever happened to you while you were over there?
I aggravated a little Korean. He was quite a bit younger and quite a bit smaller than what I was, but I was aggravating him, and one of their methods of fighting is to butt you with their head just like a sheep or a goat. And he got to trying to butt me, but I was able to stay out of his way, and I didn't try to fight back, and I was just messing with him. But he kind of got aggravated at me and wanted me off of him, so I left him alone then.
As far as your unit goes, did you primarily stay in the same region the entire time you were there, or was there a lot of mobility and moving around, or was the headquarters just in one place and then you would go off and do the various engineering tasks you had to perform and then come back?
We moved 3 times while I was there. Now, I'm not sure, we was C Company, which is Charlie Company. There is Baker and Charlie and D, which is Dog Company. There's about 4 different companies with that 151st Engineers. And the smaller companies would move about. Now, I don't know if headquarters would stay in one location or not. I'm a leaning towards they might have been in one location, and the smaller units went and moved and done the work, and they stayed in one location.
Okay. What area in Korea was your company and your battalion in?
Just north of Seoul, maybe about 50 miles. Was our first location, and whenever we left there, we went a little farther north, and our last location was just right up on the 38th parallel. Okay. And the 38th parallel, you know probably already, but I'll, just for the camera's sake and people that might watch this that won't know, is the line between the North Koreans and the South Koreans.
Okay. So you ended up fairly close to the 38th parallel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And whenever you would have various projects that your company would need to perform, your unit would need to perform, what was your specific task, or did it vary a lot?
It varied. Well, it would be one job if I was building roads. It'd be another job if I was doing building a bridge, and we were flexible. We would go wherever we was needed, because each of us understood the job that we was on, and there might be a hand needed at a certain spot, and we'd just float around and do whatever was needed to be done.
What was your favorite part of your job, being with your unit? What parts did you most enjoy?
I think I like the bridge building better than the road work, and we also worked around rock quarries where we made gravel to where other companies could come in and pick up gravel. And we helped the Norwegians on one job. They had a Quonset hut. I'm sure you know what a Quonset hut is. They wanted a concrete block building right beside it or in front of it. And I've got an awful good friend in Elgin, Nebraska. That was the leader of that job. He had a little experience in carpenter work, and he was the leader of that job, but I helped him.
Okay. As far as the men that you worked with in your unit, what kind of relationships did you build with them?
I had one particular feller. His name was Bob Williams, and his wife was Peggy. Peggy and Ann got started exchanging letters just right off the bat, just a short time after I got over there. And I was first to come home of me and the fellow that I'm talking about. But he was scheduled to come home first. And I really hated that I was able to leave, because that's one thing that the soldiers was always ready to get that notice that it's time for them to come home. And after each of us got home, within, I think, 2 weeks, Bob and Peg come to Greenfield to see Ann and I. And we went to Silver Dollar City and messed around down in that area on a little automobile cruise or outing. We was gone, I think, for maybe overnight.
Any other close friendships with anybody in your unit that you developed?
The fellow that I was telling you about, Leonard Beckman, he was the one that laid the blocks and built the building there for the Norwegians. He and his family is awful close to us. Marge and I, my present wife, we've seen them twice, I guess, this year. We went up for their 50th wedding anniversary this year, and maybe the other time was last year. We was on vacation and we come by there and stopped and said hi to them and stayed overnight. The other fellow was Bob Williams. Bob and Peg had 2 kids, and either Bob and Peg would come down here or Ann and I would go up there, and I watched his kids grow up, and they watched my family grow up. And the last time they was down, I think it was the year that Ann and I had our 40th wedding anniversary. And since then, Bob has been gone. He passed away, I'm going to say 10 years ago.
What about the higher ranking men in your unit, your company commander, your squad leader? What kind of working relationships or friendships did you have with them?
I can remember one particular incident. We was having an inspection, our company was, by a general, and most everybody was in the company area, and I decided that I was going to be where I wouldn't be seen by the general. So I decided I'd go down to the train, which was 500 yards from the main living quarters. It's outside bathrooms, but it was enclosed. But we had a crack in the building, and I could see what was going on. The first thing I knew, the general was heading in that direction. So I knew that I wasn't going to stay there while he come into the latrine. So I left just before he got down there, and just a little ways in front of him, I had seen a cigarette butt on the ground. You automatically learn to pick up cigarette butts and do what they call field stripping it. That's to rip the paper and dispose of the tobacco into the soil. And there's no evidence of a cigarette left. So I field stripped his cigarette and met him and saluted him and went on. And he stopped me and he said, "Sergeant, if you'll go up and get you a detail of men to do that, you won't have to." And I yes sir'd him and saluted him and went on. And that was the highest rank serviceman that I had anything to do with up close.
Whenever you mentioned field stripping the cigarette, was that to... What was the purpose of that? Was that to prevent enemy soldiers from...
No, it was to get it out of sight, get any and all litter, if that's the right word, papers, anything that looks bad on the ground, you pick it up and dispose of it, including cigarettes.
So just helping the place look a little bit better than
exactly
the way you found it.
And it gives the servicemen something to do.
Okay. Any other humorous stories, serious stories about your service whenever you were in your unit in Korea that you'd like to share?
This is not humorous. I can remember on the train ride, whenever I first got over there, after daylight come the next morning, we had rode all night, and there was little kids along the track that I guess they learned to run along beside the train for handouts, for candy bars and chocolatto. They love chocolattos. And there was a little girl, I'm sure she didn't have parents, and her little hair was ratted, and she had coal dust all over. You could tell that her living conditions were very poor.
Did your unit have many casualties?
We did not have casualties. Our unit, I was on guard duty at a bridge, not even at our area, all night. And the night that I was gone, about 6 o'clock in the morning, the company was having reveille. That means that they come out about 6 o'clock in the morning, and all squads have to count and make sure that all our men is there and or accounted for. And there was, I think, 3 American planes came over, and they shot up our company. We lost a lot of trucks, road graders, but there was absolutely no casualties. And right here is some pictures.
Hold them up a little higher there, Bob.
Some of the trucks that was destroyed. And I feel that it was nothing but God's power that protected us. We did lose some equipment, but there was no American lives lost. And also there was a bridge blown out just a little ways from our company. We had to replace it.
I noticed that you had brought some medals and citations out for us to see today. You want to talk about those a little bit? And
okay, this is the medals that I received while I was. This medal right here is a medal that Korea made shortly after the American people was over there, but they did not issue those until about 3 years ago. And here is 2 bronze stars. This is, I think, a Korean medal. One of these, I think it's this one right here, is a good conduct medal. And I can't read that one, it's upside down. the top left one.
Efficiency, honor, fidelity.
That's all the medals that I earned. Here is some pictures of the bridges that I either built or repaired. This one and this one. This is my wedding picture. The girl that I married 16 days before I left to go overseas. Her name is Ann. She's the mother of 3. I have since lost her from cancer and met and married another woman, which was in our church, and very happy and pleased.
Okay. Any other stories about your service in Korea? And otherwise, I'm going to move on to life after.
I can't think of any other stories. I might say this, coming home, we come home similar to that we went over, but we was on a ship and we made good time of coming back, and we were scheduled to come in, also back into Seattle at a certain day, and we made it in 2 days early, and we had to sit out there and go round and around out in the ocean until we ate those 2 days up, because we had a certain time and date to pull in.
Okay. My next question was going to be, how did you get back to the States? So I guess that answered that one. What kind of reception did you get whenever you got back home?
No reception as far as getting the band together at your town. They just greeted me and said, "Bob, it's good to have you back." And it was good to be back, and I didn't expect a big blowout whenever I come home. I was served my country, and I counted it a privilege to do that, and I wasn't expecting a big reception.
Did you go back to work or go back to school, or what did you do after you got back?
I went to work. I had a chance to. They had what they call a GI Bill. They did schooling on various things. I had a couple of brother-in-laws that went to auto mechanics, but I got involved in work, and I guess I was too busy to go to school.
Were there any after effects of your service-related experiences? Did you ever have, times where you couldn't sleep or anything like that, where your service in Korea affected your readjustment to life back in the States?
I did not have difficulties. I had one uncle that he served in World War II, and his conditions were extremely difficult, and he had flashbacks and he had difficulties. I did not experience that.
What career path did you pursue after you got out of the service since then?
I went to work for a feed elevator here in town, here in Greenfield, and worked there until, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years, and then I went to Kansas City. My family started coming. I had 2 boys. We moved to Kansas City for about 3 years, and after the boys got up, I'm going to say 2 and 3 years old, we didn't want to raise them in the city, so we come back to Dade County, And I bought a farm out between here and Everton, and to raise those boys on, and I've got a daughter. She was born shortly after I bought that farm out there.
Looking back, what is the impact of your experience in the Army on the rest of your life? How has it affected? Has it been positive or negative, or?
It has been absolutely positive, and I'll tell you why. It took just an overgrown kid, maybe somewhat smart alecky, and made a man out of him. It taught me to honor the people that was over me, and if you take somebody that's over you, you need to listen to what they've got to say and respect their authority. And if you'll do that, you'll get along.
Okay. Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
I'm a member of veteran of VFW, a veteran of Foreign Wars, and I'm also American Legion.
Are you active in both of those? What kind of activities do they do?
I am not active as of we speak. I let that membership drop 2 or 3 years ago on each of them, and just failed to rejoin it. But both organizations are good, and I probably will get back with them in the near future.
Okay. A second ago, I asked you about what your impact of your service had on your life. What about on your family's life? How did that impact them?
Well, I'm going to speak for Mom and Dad. I'm sure that it was difficult for them to see me crawl on that train and leave, because any serviceman that's going to another country to fight for your country don't know the outcome of that, but I think they were proud to be parents of a serviceman whenever I got home.
What about your wife? How did your service in the military affect Ann?
And I think made it fine, with the exception that she missed me. But as far as any difficulties, there weren't any major difficulties anyway, other than just missing each other.
All right. Well, this interview has strived to kind of summarize your, experience in the military in just a short amount of time. So, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want put on the record as far as your military service, your experiences, any thoughts, opinions you'd like to share?
I will say this: my experience with the service was considerable different than our servicemen have it today. I feel, because those people they don't know when somebody's going to jump around the core of the building and put a bullet through you, or throw a mine in under your vehicle that's coming down the road. And if you run over a mine, you're sure going to lose your vehicle, and chances are good you'll lose one limb or maybe two to go with it. And I had none of that.
You had more of a feeling of security and...
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
And well, I counted the privilege of being able to serve in for my country. And like I said earlier in the interview, I wouldn't take $1 million for the experience that I've had and what I've seen and what I've done, but I wouldn't give 2 cents to do it again.
All right. With that, Bob, thank you for allowing us to do this interview, and thank you for your service to our country.
Okay.